It is week 8 in Comp 3077 online. And to my face-to-face students, welcome to you as well, who are using these videos to get through all this excellent Excel material. And this is our week 8 required video. This is what we're covering. I'm finally going to be able to start getting right into these videos. So this is the stuff that's on the case. We're going to be dealing with one of my favorite things that Excel can do, which is taking a large collection of data and making it much easier to organize and sort and filter within the context of an Excel table. So we're going to sort, filter, format, custom filters, table functions, freeze and unfreeze rows, and we're going to do a little bit on conditional formatting as well this week. Of course, all of that is covered, as it usually is, in your FOL weekly module where it describes everything we're doing. And this week, we don't have much else to talk about. We're going to jump right into the case. So I'm already logged in. I'm going to week 8 case. You guys should be very comfortable with the routine at this point. This is a case with just an instruction file and a start file. So I'm going to pop them both into downloads here. Grab the start file. Put that in the downloads. Yours should be going in automatically, as we've talked about before. Then I'm going to go rename the start file, and I'm going to open up the instructions and start file, and we're going to be rolling. It's that simple every week. I still saw some students on the test a couple weeks ago that were struggling a bit with where their files were, where did my file go, what's going on. I'll mention this again just as I'm opening up the files. If you have a computer that automatically routes you into OneDrive, when you're done with it, it's going to be saving the whole time in OneDrive for you. And then when you're done with it, if it's easier for you not to have to navigate through and find OneDrive when you're going to upload your file in SAM via MindTap, just save a copy when you're done if you know you're on OneDrive, and then you can save right over the one you put in downloads. Let's go, computer, enable editing, and enable editing. And I'm going to jump back to the instructions, and we're rolling. So first step, what are we doing here? So Bo is a project assistant for the 5 Points Group, a management consultant company in Chicago, Illinois. She tracks the consultant's projects and billings in an Excel workbook and asks for your help. So as usual, there's somebody that you're working for that needs help with Excel because they know you're the Excel king or queen or whomever you may be. And we are going to the Kang Projects worksheet, and we're going to format the data that's there as a table. So right off the top here, I'm going to explain what's happening here. So Kang Projects. So it didn't say to do anything with all consultants. Pay very close attention every time you start a case. You always go to where it says to go. It says nothing about the all consultants worksheet at this point. It doesn't say to hide it or unhide it. It just says go to Kang Projects worksheet. So that's what we did. And that's where we are. You don't want to be here and be on the wrong sheet. This one already has a table in there. So what we have here, we have a header, and we have some formatting headings for each of these columns. But we have data that doesn't look like this one over here, nor does it look like what we did in week 5. And that was your first experience with an Excel table. So an Excel table technically isn't inserting any new content per se. What it's doing is it's formatting and adding the functionality of an Excel table to data, to raw data, just basic content that's already there. And once you do that, you can do all this stuff to it. So it's very useful. So this is how you create a table. You would have extracted this data from some kind of program. You would have put it in manually. Somehow you ended up with this data. And now you want to better sort it and organize it and filter it and stuff like that. So the instructions say, make a table, format the range as a table. So they even say it in the instructions now. They didn't used to do that like a couple of versions ago in most of these books, but now it says format this as a table. So it's not indicating to you that you're actually putting anything in there new, even though it comes from the insert menu, because that's just where it is. So it's B3 to G13. So highlight B3 over to G and down to 13. And generally, this is what you'll do. You'll highlight the column headers in your table with all the data that's included in there, and you'll go to Insert, and you'll go to Table. And when it asks if your table includes headers, unless you didn't want them to include those, like 99.9% of the time, you are trying to include headers, and that's That's what's going to give you the ability to sort through things within these columns. And you can do tables that are done more across in rows as well, but most of the time they are set up in columns. And you're going to click OK. And as soon as you do that, you're still sitting on the same range. So now you have the table tab. So like so many things we've learned in this course over so many weeks, you add these elements to an Excel file, the tab comes up in the ribbon, you click off it, the tab isn't there. It doesn't mean it's gone. It's still there. You just have to be on the table. It's sitting anywhere in the table or still highlighting the whole thing. You are now going to format the table with their preferred format, which is gold table style medium 5. And we are going here and we're going to medium and we're going to go over 5. And as you can see now, it lines up with the colors that are right in there. If you have some different version of MS Office, like very few of you do, but you just want to make sure you pick the same one from the same medium menu, even if it looks a bit different. But for the vast majority of you, it should look just like mine. Gold table style medium 5, and use Kang as the name of the table. So this is something people will miss a lot in these cases that include tables. And in the table design tab is where you can name the table. All the way over on the left side, just like the name boxes here when you're in a cell. And if you don't name it, and then you have to do a bunch of stuff to it, a SAM case will often not be able to find the table and then have to mark everything wrong. So you want to make sure you do this. You always want to make sure it's spelled correctly. This is 4 letters with a capital K. I'm pretty sure you can do this without copying and pasting. Just go into the table name from the same tab there, type capital K-A-N-G, hit enter, and you've named the table. Now we're going to do some stuff to the table. Adding a new record to a table is not as simple as you might think. Like if you go down here and start typing, it's just going to be text in a cell. It doesn't really get identified as anything other than that. What you always want to do if you're adding a record in a table is be right up against the table, and then Excel will be smart enough to know you're putting a record into a table. One thing you can do to make sure that it's a new record is go to the final cell in any table anytime you want to add a record and just hit the tab key. And then it puts in a new blank record for you. That's one way I like to do it. But if you start to type the stuff into the cells below it and you hit enter on your first cell, it should also make it a record that way. So that either way will work. And then because this stuff is already in cells in a Word table, I'm going to show you how to do this the way we've done it in the past. Don't type all this stuff out. Just copy over from B to G. Copy. Don't copy any extra spaces past this little Word table. And then go into the first one, and without even highlighting over all the cells, just right click and choose to paste by match destination formatting, and it'll put it right in there and you won't have the formatting. Now, if you just hit paste, it would still work and do it the same way by putting it into each cell separately. You don't, and if you highlighted the cells, it would work too. I'm just showing you I'm always showing you the easiest way, right? And unless it says to format it, or be careful of the formatting, or make sure you don't copy and paste, it's assuming you're going to type this in. You could leave it this way, and when you go to get it marked, even though it's not going to look just like the picture down on the bottom of the instructions, it would not mark it incorrectly. But I always, as a best practice, like to show you guys, hey, right-click, match the destination formatting, and then it's clean and it's done the way you'd want to do it in the real world. If you were copying and pasting, it's done correctly. Save your file. Let's keep moving on to step 3. So this is not a long case. Like until we get to week 9, we're not going to get, week 9's a bit longer, but this week 7 and 8 after the first test are pretty quick. So you guys should enjoy this one. She also wants you to focus on Kendra Kang's projects with contract sales over 600. Use a custom filter to display only projects with contract sales that are greater than 600. Okay, so back in the Kang Projects worksheet, we're going to click the drop down for the filter button. So this automatically appeared as soon as you made it a table. And you can sort here, and you can also filter here. So there's all these standard filters where you could just go in and check or whatever. But if you had hundreds and hundreds of records here, you're not going to start going in and just randomly clicking, well, not randomly, but clicking on each number that's over 600. That is what she wanted, right? Greater than 600? Over 600, not greater than or equal to, but greater than. So if you click on the filter drop down and you click on number filters, of course there's a greater than. There's also greater than, equal to, less than, above average, below, and you can do custom filters. where you can do equal to something and then add additional filters on top of it. Even though the instructions say, I think they say, yeah, use a custom number filter to display projects with contract totals. You don't need to actually go to the extent of using a custom filter. You can do that with greater than. So greater than, well, it actually takes you into the same place. I guess that is a custom filter. I wouldn't consider that a custom filter unless you're starting to do additional constraints. So greater than 600, filter some out. They're all still there. See, you can see the ones that are all still there, but it only shows you the ones that are over 600,000. And whenever you see this blue on the side with the rows, and you can see the row numbers still maintain the same number, you know there's a 7 in between there. You know that there's a 4, 5, 6, or 4 and a 5, and then there's a 10. So those are just filtered out for now, okay? And that was step 3. That wasn't too bad. Go to the that's probably Valleys, pronounced in a different dialect. Valleys Projects Worksheet, which contains a table named Valleys for Gabrielle Valleys Consulting Projects. Unfreeze panes. Okay, so this is the next worksheet. So if you scroll around, like put your mouse in one of these. No, don't do that. Don't click on the, just put your mouse somewhere in a cell and scroll around. You could see it's not scrolling off this particular section of the worksheet. There's a way you can freeze panes to avoid. I'll show you as an example. This first worksheet that we haven't used yet, when I scroll down, everything just scrolls away. Let's say when I scroll down, I wanted to maintain these headers in the column. Based on where your mouse is sitting, okay, so if I sit my mouse anywhere in row 4, you don't highlight stuff to freeze panes. I'm just showing you an example right now. This is not the step. This is just an example. Under the View menu is where you can find freeze panes. Wherever your mouse is sitting, if you choose to freeze panes and then you scroll down, everything above from where you were sitting, it will stay there. So this is obviously useful because now I can see the headers the whole time. And everything from where I was sitting, if I scroll over to the right, will stay there. So it still keeps that first row there too. It's all based on where you're sitting. It also has a couple auto options. You can, from wherever you're sitting, you can freeze the top row or first column. Now I'm going to unfreeze panes because that wasn't the directions. But that's how you freeze. It's a function of where your mouse is sitting. You don't highlight stuff. Now, if we go to this one, they've already frozen panes, and to unfreeze panes, it doesn't matter where you're sitting. You literally just go to the View tab and go unfreeze panes. So now I scroll around and I scroll over and it's just there, right? So somebody had frozen panes there, and it's not really necessary because the table's not big enough to require that. There, so now you can scroll all over the place, wherever you want. Unfreeze the panes in the worksheet. Okay, and that's literally the entire step. Number 5, BOW asks you to organize the projects by project type and contract amount, and to display the average amount of contracts and billings. Modify the values table, values, it's not the word. I was trying to stop myself from reading a word that I didn't actually see. My mouth was ahead of my brain there. Modify the values table as follows. Remove the filter from the values table to display all of the data. So did it say to switch worksheets? It did not, right? And if we go back and sit on this table, just to make sure we're in the right place and go to table, it says values table. And you can't name table, just same way you can't name ranges with the same exact name more than once in a workbook. Tables are the same. So this is definitely the right table. And it says remove the filter to display all of the data. Okay, so you can see right here, there's a filter turned on. We're going to turn that off. Display all of the data. And that's how easy it is to filter by just a city. By the way, if you ever want to do a filter in a filter, I think we have a step like that later in the case. I'm not 100% sure. The easiest way to do a filter is just to go choose what you want to filter by here. I can just uncheck these, choose Chicago, done. Okay, if I wanted to show all Chicago. And you could show Chicago and Houston. You can just check. If you wanted to also filter in another column, if you wanted to only see the marketing projects in Chicago, and there is one, you would have to have a filter in a filter. So if you're going to do it that way, you actually have to go to data and go into the filter, turn on the filter, sorry. Go into the filter from here. Oh, sort. That's sorting. A sort within a sort. No, that would be an advanced filter. Sorry. We already saw that. That would be an advanced filter. So you would put a filter on top of a filter. So you would have to go to advanced or custom filter. My apologies. I was actually talking about sorting. So if you're sorting something, you can do sort within a sort. I believe we do get to that later in the case. I'm just babbling about how much stuff you can do here. So anyway, that's all you have to do there is go there and select all, just turn the filter off, and then sort in ascending order by, it's the next step. Of course it is. Sort in ascending order by project type and then by contract total field. So like filtering, sorting is also equally as simple. So if you wanted to sort by project type, you would simply go to project type and sort ascending is A to Z, and it's sorted. And then it says also sort in descending order by contract total field. Okay, so if you go to contract total field and you go to sort, so descending would be like the largest to smallest. Okay, and you'll notice right away, you saw that little sort icon that it turned on when you sorted by project type. As soon as you sorted here, it unsorted by project type. So these drop downs are only ideal when you're sorting for single sorts. If you're doing multiple filters and filters on top of filters, you can still do that from within here by using custom filter. We're not going to do that in here. But for sorting, if you're doing a multi-sort, so a sort within a sort, you have to do it here. That's what I was alluding to a minute ago. So right now it's only sorted by contract total, and you'll be like, wait a minute, but I sorted by project type and it just unsorted it when you. So what you do is you get rid of this one if it's still in there. You want to go in here with no sorts at all. And then you go project type A to Z, which is ascending. And then don't click, well, if you click OK, that's fine. You can still go back in and do it again. And then you add a level. So you have to do it within the sort menu from data to be able to sort within a sort within a sort. And you can keep sorting on and on if you want. This one is going to be contract total, and this one is largest to smallest. So it's going to be descending. So make sure you set that, because if you do it the other way around, and you can always check, like I'm going to click OK, and now you'll see, so these are the marketing ones, and the highest is the highest. For operations, the highest is the highest up. For sales, those are two different categories, so they don't need to be sorted. And if you go down and look at the numbers, they should be the same. Yep, those are the same. So that's how you do a sort within a sort. It's not really any more complicated than clicking here and choosing what to sort. You just do it from here. It's just if you do it from here, it will always unsort the first sort. In order to have multiple sorts turned on and stay on at the same time, you got to do it from the data tab and then the sort menu. So moving on to the rest of step 5, insert a total row. So this is really cool. Don't go down here and tab over like I showed you to insert a new row and then type total and start merging cells together. Cells. Did I say shells? Shells. Seashells. Except they're cells. Go to the table design tab and you'd be surprised how many little tools you can turn on here. One of which is total row. So sitting anywhere in the table, you just turn on total row. That's what they're asking you to do. Turn on the total row. Use the total row to calculate the average contract total and average build to date amounts. So by default, total rows will automatically sum up the furthest right over numerical cell. And then you can just switch it to whatever you want. So for both of these, contract total, they want average. And for this one, they want average. So you don't have to use the actual functions. You choose from a drop-down, which just makes it much more user-friendly and efficient. Both of these cases are about efficiency, last week and this week. And then you just have the averages. And you can look, and those numbers are going to be the same. I'm sure they are. So I went right past it. I'm going past it again. Too much. See? So make sure that you actually switch those to averages and you don't, by default, just choose sum. And these are go-to tools. This is literally, most of this case is just like clicking on stuff and choosing buttons and stuff like that. It's quite simple. But it is stuff you guys probably haven't done before. So use the total row calculator. So build the date, contract total and build the date. And we did contract total and build the date. So we have averages from the total row. If you want to switch them to sum, you can just switch them to sum. But don't do that. That's not what the instructions said. In B12, change the text to average to represent what's there, what the amounts to indicate what's represented. I keep reading things that aren't there today. So it gave you the word total. You can just go up here and type average with a capital A instead. Make sure you type it right. Average, and you're done with step 5. Step number 6, we are moving on to the next worksheet now. So this is how this case is going to be. You're going to go worksheet, worksheet, worksheet. So save your file. Don't mess with this sheet. It's good. Move on to the next sheet. So this one already has a table too. So we had to make the table here. And then these two had tables already made, and we're just working with the stuff within the table. So we're on WASM projects. Honey WASM. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm probably close. Modify the table as follows. Sort the table in ascending order by industry. So this is a single sort, and it's just ascending by industry. So this, you can use the drop-down. Click the drop-down, ascending, which is going down by industry, A to Z. Done. That's it. You don't have to go to data sort because it's a single sort. We don't have to do what we did last time. Now we're going to convert the table to a range. So right away, I know we're going to be doing subtotals. So when you get data all put together like this, there's a really cool tool in Excel called Subtotals. And whatever you're going to be subtotaling by is typically what you sort by before you undo the fact that it's a table. So why would we undo the fact that it's a table? Why do we bother to make it a table? And then making it a table not only gives you the ability to go and sort the things the way you want them, but it also gives you a bunch of pre-designed formats, and you can set the way you want your table to look. Like you have all this stuff here. And then once it's all set up, you can make it not a table because subtotals are simply not allowed to be put on a range in Excel that is a table. Because if you put subtotals on a range that is a table and then you resort the table, then you've got subtotals all over the place. So this is just how it works. And if you need me to explain that again, just rewind and listen to how I explain that again. Subtotals are a tool that is used in the context of having Excel tables. But you make the table first, sort it all out first the way you want it, then you undo the table functionality, and it keeps all the formatting, mind you, and then you can do the subtotals. So after we sort it the way we want it, we're going to convert it to a range, which is one of the options in the table tab. Convert to range right here. So as soon as we do that, the table design tab goes away. And now if I do subtotals, they'll stay there because I can't go resorting it because it's not a table anymore. Although you can, if you just highlight this and it sees that there's headers, you can sort without making it a table. But now it's not a table. It looks like a table because it has all that cool formatting, the alternating colors. It's always nice in a table to have the alternating colors, but it's not. So you'll be able to do subtotals. So if you're trying to do subtotals, like on the quiz, for example, or something, and it's just grayed out and it won't let you click on it, it's because you didn't convert to range yet. That's why. So it says B3 to G18. So highlight B3 with the headers down to G18. You always want to include the headers when you're doing subtotals. Then go to data, and near the end, you'll see if your monitor's wide enough, it will show subtotal. If not, it will have the outline menu, and you'll go to subtotal from there, and we'll be able to subtotal here. And if you can't click on it, if it's grayed out, it's because you haven't converted to range yet. Now, this is pretty cool. So you can subtotal at each change in. So what it means is every time you go to a different version of the product ID, you're going to do subtotals, and you can either sum them up, average them up, whatever. Now, we sorted it by industry. So that's obviously going to be what we're going to subtotal by. So every time the consumer products change to the next one, we'll add a subtotal in there. So that's why you sort it first, right? That's the point. And I hope that makes sense. Every time there's a change. So consumer products, energy, that's a change. So it went to a change. So at each change in industry, whatever you're going to put up here is surely what you just sorted by. And then we are going to sum up the contract total and the build to date, and we're going to use sum. I already knew we were because I already did this case. But so you can do average, min, max, all the basic mathematical sort of statistical stuff. But we are going to sum up both contract total and build to date. It usually by default will automatically check the last column. And then that's it. You don't need to change any advanced settings or anything like that. And when we click OK, we've got all these handy subtotals. And if you want to see nothing but the totals, you can break it down to this one. If you want to just see the grand total, it's just 1. And they don't want you to expand or contract, although I think you have to do that on the quiz question. This quiz is not too bad. I'm trying to show you some extra stuff that you might encounter on the quiz. That's it. That's all you're going to do. So you leave it like that once they're subtotaled. You save your file, and you move on to the Jonas Projects worksheet. And in this worksheet, you are going to switch the table style, which we did back when we made our first table back in step 1. So sitting anywhere in the table, if you don't see the options up there, you're just not sitting in the right place. Put your mouse in the table, go to table design, and choose gold table style medium 5 again. Same one. Click it, done. Display the filter buttons. Now, why aren't the filter buttons there? Sometimes they just get turned off. And you saw me do that actually previously in the video, just very briefly. So in the data tab, if you want the filter buttons on, just go turn it on and off and they'll just turn on. I think you can also, in table design, you can turn them on and off right there, which is even easier. That's probably the correct way to do it. I'm a bit old school the way I do stuff, so I'm just showing you both ways. I just remembered that's probably what they were trying to teach you, that if you lose your filter buttons, you just turn them back on again. And we saw a little bit of stuff like that in week 5 too, where if you lost some functionality in that thing at the end of the case, you could just turn it back on that way. So that's it for step 7, but you're still going to be on this worksheet. So Bao knows that this table includes a duplicate record, but pretend, okay, if you stared at this for about a minute and a half, you probably figure out which one it is. Pretend there's thousands of records. You're never going to do that. But if you use this tool right here called remove duplicates, it will look for them all. Now, they want specifically duplicates in one category. To remove based on values in all columns. Okay, so you can just find duplicates for the project ID and clean those up, but this one in all columns. So leave them all checked, click OK. And they found 1 duplicate. So they got rid of it, and now everything else remains the same. So there's a tool for that. Like, how cool is that? And number 9, that's it. That's literally it for that table. So save your file. And then number 9, we are finally going back to that all consultants sheet. Okay, so this is where we'd started the case and I said, pay attention to the directions. You're gonna do some work on that sheet. So we just learned a bunch of stuff about tables. And now in these last several steps, we're gonna do some different stuff in terms of setting this worksheet up the way it needs to be. So we're gonna go to the all consultants worksheet, which contains the table name consultants, listing data for all 5 points groups consultants. Freeze the first 3 rows. That's funny, I already did that and I probably knew that was coming. So freeze the first 3 rows of the worksheet when the worksheet, so that it's scrolled. So if you want the first 3 rows of the worksheet frozen, you could be sitting basically anywhere in row 4, but they don't actually specify that they want any columns frozen, which means if they only want the first 3 rows frozen, you should be in A4. Remember that I taught you about, I don't know how long ago that was, 20 minutes ago maybe, that freezing something on the worksheet, so when you scroll around, it stays in the same place the whole time. That's what freezing does. You either will use, under the View tab, one of the go-to options, which is only top row or first column. Otherwise, it's a function of where you're sitting. See how it says based on current selection? But you don't need to highlight more than one. If you want everything from row 3 down frozen, but it doesn't say anything about freezing columns, you sit in A4. Let's say it wanted the first 2 columns and the first 3 rows frozen. Where would you be sitting? Pause the video for a second and think about how I just explained this. Okay, good. D4, because they wanted the first 3. Did I say 2 columns? I meant 3. A, B, C. So you'd be sitting in D4. But they don't want any columns frozen. So if you're not sitting in A4 when you go to freeze panes to freeze the top 3 rows, it will mark you wrong, because if you're just sitting, yes, it is true, sitting anywhere in the 4th row, if you go to freeze panes, it'll freeze the top 3 rows, but it will also freeze everything to the left of that. So if you don't want any columns frozen, sit in A4, freeze panes. Done. See, scroll down, they stay there. I don't want to over-explain that. I probably already have, in fact. And freeze the top 3 rows. of the worksheet to display the worksheet column headings when the worksheet is scrolled. So that's done. Number 10, Bo asks you to calculate the difference between the contract totals and billed to date amounts. Modify the consultant's table as following. Add a table column to the end of it. So adding a table column, if we go sitting in the table, and we can sit at the top or wherever, just sit, let's sit here, okay? And we want to add a column. So there's a couple different ways to do this, like keeping in mind that we're scrolling, but it doesn't really matter. I usually sit in the top of the table in the far right corner, and you see that there aren't really any buttons for this. So if you just, enter something here and hit enter, it will know that you're right next to the column, and you probably want that to be part of the table. You're right next to the last column. Another way to do it is also just to sit in the last column of any table, and where it says table, insert here. Insert table column. So table actually is part of the menu where you can add different stuff that relates directly to the table. When you're in a table and you go to insert, you can insert columns to the left, columns to the right. So I'm going to do column to the right, and it's the same thing. And that's really the proper way to do it, even though I just showed you the cheat way. That's the way I'd prefer you do it. And once you do it that way, you're going to use amount due as the column heading. So go in there and type amount due and hit enter. And then you probably already noticed these are all nicely sitting right in the middle of the top and the bottom of the row, which is just vertical centering, which you learned in week 2. So that's centering. That's right, middle of line, that's it. That's already centered because it was centered by default from the format in the table. And then in cell H4, enter a formula using a structured reference. So this is a big deal, and the reason I picked a different table case than we used to have is because I wanted to talk about structured references before we get to week 9 and use all these structured references. So what they want you to do is subtract the bill to date column from the contract column. So what they actually want you to do is go equals the contract from, so equals this minus this. So if you just typed it in, so ignore what just came up on the screen there first. If you just typed in F4 minus G4, you would get the correct answer. And because you're in a table, which is really cool, it auto-completes for you. Now, that is not the right way to do it. You will get that wrong, even though all your numbers will look exactly the same as the answer. They want you to use structured references. So the only difference is when you're inside a table, and you'll always know you're in there because the table design tab will be up, if you click on the cell, instead of actually typing in the cell reference, it's like using named cells that we learned last week. It will then associate it with this cell in this column in the table, in that row. And then you're going to subtract from it this cell. So this looks like a whole heck of a lot more than you need to understand. But all you really need to understand is it's that cell from the contract total column minus this cell from the contract total column. And those are structured references. This that you see right here, okay, this is a structured reference. And when you hit enter, you get the same exact answer, and it also auto-completes the same way. Without it, that is the right way to do that. And it's literally, this step is one thing minus another. And when we first learn structured references, I always have students just freaking out because they go back and look at the formula and they're like, what the heck is that? All that is F4 minus G4. That's all it is. But it's referencing the cell from within the table. And then wherever you move the table to, no matter what the cell reference says, it still maintains the integrity of that. It's like making it absolute in a way. Okay, and then it says fill the range if it doesn't automatically do so. So you may have a situation, where you're dealing with Windows settings or settings on your Mac where it's not allowing it to autofill, and that's okay. Just use the fill handle and scroll down. You know how to do it. I'm pretty confident that everyone who does this case will actually have it filled automatically. I think they will. Okay, so that was pretty cool. I mean, and we're going to do more of that in week 9. So now we're going to use functions that are mainly statistical type of functions that I call I kind of refer to them as database functions because it feels like they're just different ways of extracting certain versions of data from a table. But these are very easy to do. But again, you're going to use, I don't know if they actually have you using structured references or not. Let's just go ahead and do it exactly the way they say to do it. In K4, you're going to use count A. So count A, if you type it out, okay, you don't have to know which category that's in. I realized that we started using the function wizard back in week 3, and we tried to figure out where all these functions were going to be. I believe these are under more functions, statistical. Yeah, they are under stats. Count A, so you can pull it up from here. So count A counts any cells in a range that have stuff in them. Basically, that's it. Like everything in a range. So it's just going to count the amount of projects. And then as the table grows, it will keep counting them. So all of this is a pretty simple version of this. And you are going to use structured references. I think that's the point of this. So you can type it in and go to the FX, or you can simply just go right to here and pull it up and it'll be in the function wizard already. And you're going to count all the values in the product ID column. See how they didn't tell you the cell range because they want you to use structured references. So go to product ID, but don't highlight the word product ID. Just highlight all the cells in the table underneath the header, and it will automatically know that in the consultants table, you want everything in product ID. If you highlight the column header, I think the function actually still works, but I think Sam will mark you wrong. So make sure you do it that way. And you have 37 projects. So that's just counting stuff in cells, which is a function we've already done actually in a previous case. The only reason it was trickier is because we're using structured references. And you can see here where we use structured references, it was just the cell at that row in this column, the single cell at that row in this column. When we did it here, as soon as we highlighted the entire column, it picked up that whole column in the consultants table, because this table is the consultants table, see? Okay, next one. So that one's really simple. Like that should not. So the next one says, use the sum function with a structured reference to total the values. So, and we're going to do more of these in week 9. These are pretty cool, these database type of functions. I'm kind of remiss that we only did the one, but we pick up where we leave off there in week 9. So K5 just wants to sum up the total values and contract total. So just don't type it in. Just pick it up with your mouse, and that's literally all they're saying to do. So equals sum. We are in the right cell, right? K5, yeah. Equals sum, and we're summing up contract total. So go to contract total, highlight every cell with a total in it. You don't need, and then it will automatically know it's all of the contract totals and consultants. Hit enter, you're done. Yes, you would get the same number if you typed in F4 to F40, but Sam would mark it wrong because you're not using, as they're asking you to do by literally putting these in the square brackets, they're telling you to use the structured references. Well, they're also saying structured reference. So yeah. And then in K6, sum up everything build to date. So equals sum. We're in K6 already. Build to date. Highlight everything in there. As soon as you get down to the bottom, you saw when I first started scrolling, it did say G4, but as soon as you start going through and pick up everything in that column, it knows you can use a structured reference. And that's it for 11. I would save your file there. We got a couple more steps and we're done. Bo wants you to make it easy to filter the consultants table based on the project type and location. So he wants you to add slicers. So if the filters that are built in are not enough, so all of these filters here, or you want to do additional filters in filters. Remember how I was already talking about how you can use a custom filter to filter within a filter. If you want to start expanding out and filtering in more columns within existing filters, you can use the slicer. So this is a thing that came out in 2016 Office. It hasn't been around that long. And what we're going to do is insert 2 slicers, one based on the project type field and the other based on the location field. So, and then we're going to apply slicer yellow to the 2 slicers. So does it say where to put them? So yeah, we got to reposition each of them. Okay. So we'll put them both in at the same, we'll put them each one after the other, and then we'll do the stuff in order of how it asks us to do it. So sitting anywhere in the table. You can do this two ways, actually. This from anywhere in the table, so it doesn't matter where you're sitting. In the table design tab, the slicer is here. Like if you're in a pivot table, slicers are more common. It's the same thing. But if you're in the table and you're in the insert menu, the slicer button will be available here as well. So again, what this is just, it's almost like a built out filter from the table. And it just allows you to filter over top of another filter in a separate column in the table, which is pretty cool. So I always think it's easier to stick with the table design tab. We're going to insert two slicers here. So when you go insert slicer, it right away says, what do you want to slice? And it's filtering. Okay. So you're going to slice by project type and then by location. So don't worry about applying this to them yet. Just make the two of them. So project type, click OK. Don't worry about where it's sitting. By the way, you should here. I'm going to drag this over here a bit. If you're here, just as an example, if you were down here when you went to do this, then this would be down there. But as soon as you go in there, if there's enough in there to scroll, you'd technically be scrolling in there. So if this was down here, for example, then you scrolled back up, you're not going to know where it is. So maybe before you go to insert filter, I should have put that in there. I'm telling you now, whatever. You probably haven't done it yet anyway. Scroll all the way up in the table to where you've frozen the rows and then do it. It'll just make it easier. That way you're not scrolling around trying to find them. But if your filters disappear, it's just because you're scrolled to a part on the sheet where you can't see your slicer, your filter slicer. So I'm going to put that one there. I'm just going to leave it there for now. And you're also going to do location. So click back in the table. Like you noticed, as soon as you made the slicer, there's now a menu item in the ribbon for the slicer. So you got to click back in the table and go to table design and do another slicer for location. Click OK. And it sticks it there, and you can stick it down below it because that's about where you're going to put them. Now it wants you to make each slicer a certain style. And I'm already on the location one, so I'll do that one first. It's this one right here. Light yellow. It is light yellow, isn't it? Light yellow. Yep, that one. Click back on the other slicer. You have to do these each separately, right? And you got to place them separately too. That's that one, the fourth one over. And then you're not actually going to slice anything with these. They do work pretty cool. Like if you only want to see operations, you do that and scroll down a bit. If you only want to see the Houston one that have to do with operations, there's only one of them. So that's the magic of the filter and the filter. If you want them to be wide open again, you just unfilter them by clicking that button. So, but that's not actually part of the instructions. You're just making them, formatting them, and placing them. And that's it. So we've made them and we formatted them. Now we're going to reposition them. So the project type one is going to go above the other one, and it's going to be J8 to K14. It's actually telling you could turn the grid lines on to make it easier. I think that's a good idea. So I'm going to go to the View tab. You know how to do this from week 2. Grid lines. Just turn them on. We can turn them back off after. K8. So click on 8. You can click your mouse too to make sure. So that's in K8. Again, don't go right up against it. It's talking about how you can go. Don't touch them because then you'll get it wrong. Just leave a little bit of space there. And then K14. So K14, which about should show, well, it's still a little higher. Yeah, I would pull it down a tiny bit. And just don't go right to the edge of K. Just so there's space there, and then you'll get it right, even if it doesn't look identical to the instructions. Next one is J16 to K28. So grab the white space to move it. Click on it, then grab the white space to move it around. J16. And we will use slicers later in the course where we actually get to slice. This is more just working with them, and then we'll use them again. I think it's next week, actually. J16 through K28. 28 is a little bit higher. Oh, I sliced. I don't want to do that. Click the box. If you slice, just turn the filter back off. It's just because it probably help you learn more if you end up doing that by accident. And now if I zoom out a bit, you'll see it looks about like the instruction. This one might not be quite as wide. You can make it a tiny bit wider if you really want them to be like identical. It's fine. And that's it. You've made 2 slicers. You've made them both this color. You've resized them into their respective areas in C and D. Now I would turn off the grid lines, okay? You don't really need them, so just turn them off. And you don't want to get something wrong that you shouldn't have had on. Doesn't matter where your mouse is, just stick it back on the table somewhere. I zoomed out to see those, but I can zoom back in again if I want. If Sam's not grading the zoom, it shouldn't matter. And then finally, now that we've made these cool slicers, I don't need the filter buttons anymore. And I already showed you guys how to turn off the filter buttons. So just sitting anywhere in the table, so you didn't need to go back to the table. Go here, turn off the filter. Oh, I already had them turned off. Yeah. Anyway, you wouldn't have had them turned off. Just go here and turn them off by checking the box. You don't want to see them on there. See them? On, off. Then save your file, close your file. Let's go and submit. So you'll see I've already turned one in. You guys could tell as I was going through this, I've already done this case. But I'm hoping this video, it's always good when I don't have to go back and fix stuff. If this is a hundo, we're going to find out. And I love this part of the video. It's like, am I that good? Am I going to get 100? We'll see. Keeping in mind, I already did it. Okay, so there you go. I did get 100. So every step in the case, as you saw in this video, in this production of the video, and I must have turned off, just make sure you turn those filter buttons off in step 13. I mean, I showed you how to turn them on and off, so it's fine. I'm not sure mine were off. I must have turned them off at some point before. And you get it done. You miss anything, you go back to the video, you redo the step. You guys know the drill. Thanks for being here for another excellent presentation of Excel. This is everything we covered, and we're going to pick up where we left off on this next week. And I did add one item in there that we were just kind of introduced to structured references, which we're going to get way more into in week 9. I will see you then in week 9. Can't wait.